I'd like you to join me in the knowledge within yourself that you are spirit. I am spirit. When we reach a point of inner agreement on that, we will be ready for our class.
Hi, welcome to Stir Up Your Purpose channel. Thanks for stopping by. If you are new to this channel, welcome. And if you are drawn to the absolute or infinite way teaching, you are welcome to subscribe. But only subscribe if you know you are truly drawn to this type of teaching. The ideas shared on this channel is meant for those who are ready for the meat of truth and not just the milk. Those who are not ready will falter when the words seem to challenge their age-old mindset and ideology. In the infinite way principle, there is no God and there is just no room for human race in this principle. This reminds me of a statement made by Fitch in another seminar. He said, if we took our present seminar and made it an open class for all of the world, we will find a mixture of reactions among the listeners. Some will frown, some will be perplexed, some will shout blasphemy, some will be confused. All of the world teaching is against what we are saying together here. It's as if the drowning man has no capacity to accept the lifesaver. He says, let me drown. Let me drown. I don't want to be saved. I want to die. And although there is little doubt in the minds of some of us that the world needs the truth that is in these infinite way teachings and in the Bible, from a spiritual interpretation, there is a widespread rebellion against change from tradition. Tradition dictates that we must die and we must hope for a future better life on the strength of our present goodness along certain channels of goodness. So we must expect opposition if we bring our teachings to the marketplace. And individually, we must expect opposition if we try to sell it to our neighbor or even to members of our family who disapprove. Each must be allowed to select their own way. Each body of water must run its own course into the river. It's nice to be asked to share, but when you are not asked, you cannot share that which another individual refuses to receive. You can't force it down somebody's mouth or into their consciousness. And so, don't be surprised if you go forth all aglow and know that you have something to give to the world, but it doesn't want it. And the best way you can give it is to leave it secretly and silently and in every way secretly. So I invite you to poke around the channel, and once you know the ideas, concepts or principles resonates with your inner truth, then do not hesitate to subscribe or share the content. We're not looking for quantity, but quality, for iron sharpens iron. Today, I'm sharing the night class from the Mount Hood Seminar Series given by Fitch in 1976. There are 10 classes altogether in this series, and I've shared the first 8 classes, and you can check the link below, or I should be up here up here for classes 1 to 8. This night class is titled Soul Healing. In this series, Herb takes the listeners on a soul journey. It brings out the inner truth of the symbolic meanings of the 10 Commandments. And in this night class, he elaborates on the 9th commandment: thou shalt not bear false witness to your neighbor. Here, Herb beautifully explains this commandment through the deeper meaning of soul healing. And key takeaway for me in this 9th class is contained in this statement: your function then in healing, which is the phase of bearing true witness to God, we're discussing at the moment. Bearing true witness to your neighbor is not to heal your neighbor. Soul healing does not heal your neighbor. The mind sees the problem, and the soul reveals the problem is not there. That's the essence of soul healing. Soul healing reveals what the mind imagines to be there as totally non-existent. And therefore, if you are using your mind to do it, you're not in soul healing. You've got to be above your mind. You've got to be out of the world mind, which presents the claim. And as usual, I leave you with my favorite Fitch statement from this seminar. And I hope you like the beautiful images that I've compiled from British Columbia, Canada. And as the saying goes, I get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I get to share my passion for the infinite way teachings and my love of landscape photography with you. Thanks for listening.
Where do you begin and where does God end? Is there a place where God ends and you begin? And if you can find that place where God ends and you begin, you will not be in absolute truth. Think about it a moment. Is there a God in you, or is there a God without a beginning and without an ending? And now, try to find yourself in that picture. Now, if you want to be absolute and you find no place where God ends and you begin, then you must go deeper than the surface of that understanding. You must then act from that awareness. See if you can accept that there is no place where God ends and you begin. And when you feel you can accept it, make the correction in consciousness, firmly, knowing you can never go back to a place where there is a separation between God and yourself. And now, go even deeper, because there is no place where God ends and I begin. I and the Father are one. But God is spirit. And if you have pledged yourself to absolute truth, you must now accept that because God does not end and you begin, but God is continuous and God is spirit, the only reality to which you can answer is, I am spirit.
I'd like you to join me in the knowledge within yourself that you are spirit. I am spirit. When we reach a point of inner agreement on that, we will be ready for our class. I do not believe that any of us is a different spirit than the other. And therefore we're really all cluing into the one self. I am the infinite spirit, the one spirit. I am the Spirit of God. Whither can I flee? From the one Spirit. It is omnipresent. It is unseparated. Where do I begin and where does it end? Where does it end and where do I begin? Nowhere. I am the one infinite Spirit. There is no place where it stops to become me. There is no place where it stops to become my neighbor. It is I. My neighbor is the one infinite Spirit. And I am the one infinite Spirit. My material neighbor is not there. My material self is not here. Neither of us are here, for we are the one infinite Spirit. Is there an acceptance within your consciousness of this truth? If not, you will not bear true witness to your neighbor. If there is, you are on the right track, and if you maintain it faithfully, you will find that you will bear true witness to your neighbor throughout the universe. Always your neighbor will be your spirit. Paul says that we have been given different gifts. Some of us can prophesy, some can do healing, some can do other things. I don't agree with Paul. When it comes to spiritual healing, I don't believe it's a special gift given to any one person at all. I believe 100 people in this room can do spiritual healing, and will, as some already are doing very effectively. Healing is the natural result of knowing that I am the spirit of the universe and my neighbor is the spirit of the universe. And when you know the truth, you are in the healing consciousness. And when you depart from the truth, you are not in it. It is not a question of a gift. That is, a gift that is specially just for you. I further believe that everyone should be in the healing consciousness. Because if you're not, it's a sign that you're separated from spiritual identity. Now, there will be varying degrees of effectiveness depending on other factors, of course, and one of them is going to be a simple thing called experience, which has nothing to do with your aptitudes, nothing to do with your unique qualifications. It's simply the fact that you've put in the time to do it. For those of you who have aspirations in this direction or feel called in that direction, I would suggest that you specialize and do only that kind of work, if that is the thing you feel called to do. What I mean is, don't try to have all of the so-called spiritual gifts, but concentrate on this particular one if that is what you feel you do best, or if that is what Spirit is telling you to do. Specialize. Put your time in it, and develop those spiritual viewpoints which are necessary in order for you to demonstrate the presence of the kingdom of God. Now, we have learned that healing is grossly exaggerated, grossly misunderstood, and grossly misrepresented. Primarily, it's because of the word healing itself. We think of healing as healing a physical body. And that should be, for all of us, the early McGuffey Reader kind of healing. We should all be in the point where we know we can handle this type of thing, whether we're practitioners or not. And it comes only because you dwell in I am the Spirit of God. The minute you leave that for 5 minutes or 10 or a day or a month, you'll discover that all of your healing capacities have vanished. Sometimes we get good practitioners who, for some reason or other, are called away from the work, and they're involved in other things, and they're not good practitioners anymore. This little girl who was a gymnast in the Olympics, if she laid off for 2 or 3 months, she wouldn't get all those perfect scores. It's the continuity of practice in this just as in anything else. So if you're going to be a spiritual practitioner, you've got to live in the Spirit. There's no two ways about it. However, there are certain things that will have to be faced. And one is, you're not going to have a perfect record. You're not going to reveal the perfection of God to and through everyone who comes to you. Especially if you think you're a practitioner. And more especially if you think you have a patient. You never have a patient. There is no such thing. I am the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God is my infinite identity. The Spirit of God is the identity of my neighbor, and that's all there is. You've got to find a patient somewhere, and you can't. If you find one, you're going to fail with that particular patient. Now, when you have a claim, it is your function to bear true witness to your neighbor. Thou shalt not bear false witness to your neighbor. And you cannot bear true witness to your neighbor if you do not identify your neighbor properly. I'd like you to know that no person can ever make a claim. In all the history of healing, no person has ever made a claim. And so if you try to heal this person who allegedly makes a claim, or that person, you've got different persons who aren't there making different claims that aren't there. You've been treating the wrong patient. And the patient doesn't feel any better for that reason. You're not bearing true witness. There's only one patient, and that's the world mind. It comes at you, and every claim that you receive from a person is being given to you by the world mind. It's your only patient. and it comes to you first with this claim, and then with that claim, and then with the next claim, and you think you're working with different people, and you're not. You're working only with the world mind wearing different form appearances. And once you get into the habit of recognizing this is not a person making a claim, you're beginning to know more about the spiritual reality that is present where form appears. Now, we're in a totally different element when we try to help people spiritually. We're in a place where you cannot afford to make mistakes. You cannot afford to let down your spiritual awareness and become humanly aware. That would be like a chef who knows the right recipe but doesn't use it. You must be in truth, and you can't move out of truth for the sake of human sympathy. Now, you know that many things happen in the healing work that are of an emergency nature. And so, from whatever experience you've had in calls already, you know that when the calls come to you, it's never on schedule. It's not like you arrange your day. Everything is always out of context. You've got a friend perhaps in a car waiting to go to the airport. You're to drive her. You put something in a pot and you're going to come back in a half hour and take it out of the pot. You've got one earring on and one earring off, and you're about to run into the car when the phone rings and somebody's having a stroke. It's never the way you would plan it. And always because it comes at a moment when you're unprepared for it, you're then in a state of, what am I going to do now? You've got this to do, that to do, and the other to do. Before you know it, you're in a panic. And you've accepted that you now have a great responsibility. You've got to get this person well. And in those 5 seconds after you receive the call, you break every one of the 10 Commandments before you even start to work. You break the knowledge that God is all. You accept the graven image. You use the name of the Lord in vain. You do not live in the seventh day. You do not honor divine manifestation, so forth. Commit adultery. You see the point then that in order to bear true witness to your neighbor, you must always bear true witness to yourself. Now let's take some sample cases and let's see what we're going to do about them. Let's take arthritis, and you have this call. Now, who is making the claim? Number one. God is not making the claim, and God is all. Who created arthritis? God did not create arthritis. If God did not create it, is it there? No. If it is not there, how are you going to heal it? So do you see, you've got to be in a totally different frame of awareness than just a person or a practitioner who received a claim. Now, we're not talking about mind healing anymore. We're talking about soul healing. Soul healing is without the human mind. And it's very different. It's so different that at first you wonder, am I helping that individual at all? Because you seem to be going the other way. Now, in soul healing, you have a different kind of thing. You're not trying to insert your thought into that patient's mind. You're not trying to change that person's mind. In soul healing, you do something very, very special. Now let's go back to the arthritic victim who calls you. Your first assumption is that that person is there, and between that person and you there is distance. There is no such claim. It is untrue. There is no distance between you and the patient, ever. Whether it's 5 million miles or the same room, there's no space between you. And if there is, you've lost it. You're bearing false witness. You're not accepting oneself. Oneself has no distance between it. And so we must eliminate the belief that this call came from a distance, or this letter came from a distance. Let's take the term that Joel gave us, which is beautiful. Let's take it and know that every claim is the world mind's white poodle. And all you can receive is the white poodle universe. The individual who sees a white poodle that isn't there, because that individual is separated from spirit. Where the separation from spirit occurs in consciousness, there will always be what is called a claim. A white poodle. Something that isn't there, but is there to the patient seemingly suffering from it. And now the letter or the phone call says, here's my white poodle, get rid of it. And that's when you say, I've got to get this person well, and you have a white poodle too. Which is never there. You cannot heal it because God never placed it there. Your function then in healing, which is the phase of bearing true witness to God we're discussing at the moment, bearing true witness to your neighbor, is not to heal your neighbor. Soul healing does not heal your neighbor. The mind sees the problem, and the soul reveals the problem is not there. That's the essence of soul healing. Soul healing reveals what the mind imagines to be there as totally non-existent. And therefore, if you're using your mind to do it, you're not in soul healing. You've got to be above your mind. You've got to be out of the world mind which presents the claim, or the white poodle is in you, and you're going to struggle with it. Now, the most common errors that I find are that state of personal responsibility, the belief in distance between the one who called and the one who is answering the call, the fear that something is going to happen at the other end if you don't do your job right, and to bring it into its highest level, the belief that there is something external that must be improved. There is nothing external if you are living as spiritual identity. All that seems external to you is only in your material sense. We learn from the healing work that it is impossible to obey the 9th commandment for any person on this earth. No person can obey it. No person can bear witness truly to his neighbor. Only Christ can bear true witness. So the world has failed to obey the commandment because the purpose of the commandment is to lift us into Christhood, to make us seek to solve the riddle of how to bear true witness to our neighbor. The goal has been placed high above our human level, and in order to comply and not violate, we must lift ourselves beyond the mental level of the so-called world, so-called patient, and we must specialize. We must live in spiritual identity. When I say specialize, I mean live in spiritual identity without opposite, not trying to wear too many hats. Now, if you still feel that you want to move in that direction, wonderful. Then we can go a step further. Now, you must realize that the claims are always untrue. No person in the world has a true claim. And every individual who is calling, the real self of that individual is already free long before the call ever gets to you. And I think the classic example of that might be Lazarus. Or perhaps even Judas. If you are living in spirit, you behold spirit, not Judas. You behold spirit, not a dead Lazarus. Now watch how closely you are required to live up to the highest ideal of spiritual identity. Your name is Christ Jesus. One of your 12 is a betrayer to the world, but you don't believe so. You do not believe that Christ can be betrayed. Secondly, you do not believe any of the 12 is a person. They are all the Christ of you. You are bearing true witness to the 12. The good ones and the bad ones make no difference to you. You are bearing true witness to the Christ of John, the Christ of Peter, and the Christ of Judas. Nothing can tempt you out of that knowledge. You are bearing witness to the Christ of healthy people and the Christ of unhealthy people. And nothing can tempt you out of that knowledge. Their health or lack of health doesn't change who they are. And so if Peter denies Christhood 3 times, that doesn't change his identity. If Judas is going to outwardly betray, that does not change his identity. And above all, the identity of Christ Jesus doesn't change because there are those in the outer world who would in some way offend or persecute his physical image. He is still the infinite I Christ. He is still the infinite I Christ of Judas and of Peter and of the Roman Emperor and of Pilate. He is the infinite I Christ of his own executioners. He is the I Christ of the thief on the cross. He is the I Christ of all who walk the earth, as you must be. And so when the form called Judas makes its claim that it is going to betray him, when the world mind presents this picture to him, that is the temptation to accept what the world mind presents. But Christ doesn't accept it. Christ is not concerned about being betrayed. There is no power in betrayal to the Christ. There is no power to cause pain or suffering to the Christ. There is no power to cause sickness to the Christ. And that's all you're ever dealing with is the Christ. You're bearing true witness to your neighbor. Judas is not there. If Judas were there, Christ would not say, now go ahead and hang me up. Go ahead and betray me. No, if there were really a Judas, Christ would say, let's get him now. Let's not let him betray me. Let's hang him up instead. But there is no Judas. There never was. Judas is the temptation of the world mind to present to us another identity than the invisible Christ. The Christ recognizes this, and the Christ is not intimidated. The Christ is not jeopardized. Go ahead, Judas, get out there and go through your act. Let's see what it's like. There's no one in this physical form that you see, Judas. I'm the invisible Christ. And this is the great teaching for all who would be in the practitioner work of this spiritual mission. There's no Judas out there. There's no sick patient out there. Don't let this world mind tempt you into that belief. And so, the thing we want to learn carefully is that in bearing true witness to the patient, we first have to bear true witness to ourselves. If you're out of focus, everything else will be. And so, practice this now with me. It's going the other way. We're throwing out all the rule books of healing. We're saying heal no patient. No patient whatsoever. Never heal a patient. Disregard Judas. Disregard the patient. Heal yourself. Heal yourself this way. I am spirit. There's nothing else on my mind, not a patient nor a sickness, nor an illness, nor a problem, nor a voice that was in pain, nor a personal responsibility. I don't know of anyone I have to get well. I only know I am spirit. I am the only, the one infinite spirit. This so-called patient is an idea in the world mind presented to my mind, and that's where the so-called patient is right now in my mind. That's the only place it's ever going to be. It can't get out of my mind. And right there in my mind is where I'm going to heal myself of the belief in a patient. This patient can never get out of my mind. Ever. There's nothing the patient could do to get out of my mind. Because that's where the patient is. It's in the world mind which is in me. That's all it is an image there. There's no sick image. There's no suffering image. I can watch all that and know it isn't there. It's an image. It's a world mind image. I've got it on the TV set of my mind, and that's the only place where it is. Now let's take someone we're thinking of and put them right in that TV set right now. going to eventually see that image dissolve. We're going to divest it of all power. It has no power whatsoever. All power is in the infinite Christ of my being. Eventually the image dissolves. And as it dissolves, it's out of your mind. It's not in your conscious thought. You are now out of concern about that image. You are resting in who you are. I am healed of an image. I don't believe in human images. I believe in the infinite spirit. It is the only substance present, and it is perfect now. You may have to dwell in this pregnant silence for quite a while. Anything can happen. You're not trying to make anything happen. Now, if you will apply your 10 Commandments very carefully, you will see that as you move through them slowly, one truth here and one truth there will catch on fire. There is only the power of God, no other. What power is there beside the power of God? I'm not healing a graven image. I simply recognize it is a graven image without God's substance. I cannot use the name of God in vain. I is the name of that so-called patient. I'm resting in the perfection of the seventh day. I'm honoring the invisible divine manifestation. I'm honoring the one infinite spiritual body. And I'm letting the Spirit of God do whatever it wishes to do to reveal its presence, its perfection, its eternal glory. Do you hear the Father talking? Do you hear the silent sound of the inner voice? As you do, the healing is taking place. That's how you'll know. You'll hear the thoughts of angels. And that is the healing consciousness coming into focus within you. Until all your attention is deep within. You've lost all contact with the outer world. When you feel this, you'll know that you are being taken through the infinite kingdom. The fullness of the Father is permeating your entire consciousness. There is no place where God ends and a patient begins. All is the invisible Father. Lazarus isn't there at all. Only the Spirit of God is there. Judas isn't there. The disciples aren't there. The cripple isn't there. The blind man isn't there. There is no one there but the invisible I, Christ. The one invisible I am, self, is all there is. And if I can remove this me who is here and have the one invisible self alone here, my work is done. Can you crucify yourself while you sit in a chair? If you do, you will heal your so-called patient. Step out of the belief that you are there. In the absence of you, only the one infinite self is there. And this is the life of one who practices spiritual or soul healing. There is no me here. There is no Jesus here. Only the Father's Son, the Christ, is here. There. Everywhere. And unless I can realize it here and deny myself, I'm going to have a lot of unhappy patients. As long as there's a me, there's going to be a him and a her. And if you still want to be a practitioner, that's what you must make of your mind. You may have to crucify yourself 20 times a day. And be reborn 20 times a day until you get the feeling of standing in the spiritual self without going back out into the material sense of self. Now let's stop for a moment. There is only one way to handle the claim. There are others, many others. And we want to stay loose. We don't want to be in a stereotyped posture which says, I'm going to do this. We want to be spontaneous. We want to realize the infinity of our being. And sometimes you might find you take the claim instantly and say, Father, explain this to me. What is this, Father? Tell me, explain it, show me, and then wait. But always agree with thine adversary quickly. Recognize world mind is trying to persuade me that I am not the Christ. That's what the call's all about. It's not trying to present to you a claim of an individual. It's trying to persuade you that you are not the Christ. And the minute you accept that claim, you aren't. Now let's go into another individual. You can take any individual you want. That is the same world mind presentation of a different individual. One creator, one perfect creator, one source. Its creation must be perfect. There is no other creator. What is this presenting itself to me? It is not creation. And so I have nothing more to do with it. Nothing. One creator is manifesting a perfect creation. Now let's eliminate the belief in a material or physical creation. There is no physical creation. Only pure light everywhere. God is running a perfect kingdom. Nothing has been overlooked. God is maintaining a perfect kingdom now. And while you are resting in the knowledge of the perfect creation maintained by the perfect Father, the world mind cannot further express in you. It cannot perpetuate that image through you. And as you develop this capacity, ultimately it is going to hit a stone wall in your consciousness. And when it does, that which you would call your patient is going to say, I feel better, the eyes will open, the pulse beat will return to normal, because the realization within you, which dissolves world mind in you, also changes the channel for world mind in the patient. That is because there is no distance between you and the patient. In the realization of one self where you are, that same realization comes forth in the one self, which is the invisible reality of the patient. Now we could take many cases of this kind, and each one will be treated a different way depending on that which Spirit brings to you at that moment. But there are basic facts that always remain permanent. And the one is that you're not healing the patient. You have no personal responsibility. You have a spiritual responsibility to be true to Spirit. Now, beyond this is the necessity for you to realize that healing the person is only difficult because the principles that you apply during the healing process were not applied in your normal living process. It's as if suddenly you're called upon to be something you weren't. But if you, and I mean specialize in being spiritual being, you'll find you don't have to go through much of the inner turmoil and inner changing and adjusting. It's just something you find yourself doing, and the call hits you at that particular level of consciousness without you having to go in and out and turn yourself upside down. Now, many of you won't be working at this level, but those of you who plan to will find that because you're working at this level, you're able to quickly meet your adversary and to know that this that comes to me is not a truth. This is only the world mind making a challenge to my spiritual integrity. Now I'd like you all to join with me on a real case. Some of us are working on a case here. And I want you to work with no instruction, just to get the feeling that you've just been called. We'll just skip the details about what kind of a case it is. But there are about 6 of us working on one. And we have an individual who is unconscious. Your problem is that you have been called upon to face this particular condition. And I want you to make your own adjustments with no instruction.
Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. Spirit is taking us now into the three temptations. But don't be misled into thinking that these are the three temptations of Jesus. Jesus here represents your new consciousness. These are your three temptations. And they are very subtle. They will make you or they will break you. And only if you can take the time to study them, to understand them, to prepare yourself for these temptations, will you walk through the waters untouched. Now watch carefully. If there is a man on this earth today who can change stones into bread, all he need do is appear publicly and the world will worship him. The world will follow him and acclaim him. He will be a god unto men. And you and I, in our human consciousness, would consider this a marvelous thing. If I can turn stones into bread, what could be better? I could feed the starving world. And so this would be the temptation of good. Not of evil, but of good. Do you see the subtlety? And you say, what's wrong with turning stones into bread? But here stands the master. And he is going to refuse. And therefore there must be a place in your consciousness where you are not seeking to turn stones into bread. And we must catch the fullness of the meaning there. Let's go back a little. Jesus is baptized at the Jordan. And Jesus, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the waters. And lo, the heavens were opened unto him. And he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting upon him. And lo, a voice from heaven saying, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. This is just before the temptations. And so what are we learning here? There is a moment when you are baptized of the Spirit. You accept, you learn who you are. Son of God. Yes, I am the Son of God. I am the living Spirit. I am an immortal, not a mortal. I am not a human being. I am not flesh and blood. This has happened. This comes to you. You know this. And now you have accepted sonship. The early whisperings that you are the Spirit, the living Spirit of God, have been realized in your consciousness, and now you're in the wilderness. You're trying to assimilate the meaning, the fullness, the glory. And you spend 40 days, 40 nights, meaning you must come to the total acceptance of identity. And this is where we find the master at this point of the temptations, just as you will be. Up to a point, you consider turning stones into bread a marvelous thing, and you would jump at the opportunity. You would even spend your lifetime seeking such a capacity. But now when you are accepting sonship, the temptation to do this hits a different level of consciousness, which is, wait a minute, what is happening here? And this is the place we're stopping right now to look at it together, to see it, understand it. Remember, when we started this seminar, our purpose was to follow absolute truth, because that is the only kind of truth there is, and it is the only kind of truth that leads to transition. Our goal is transition. Our method is absolute truth. And now the world says to you, you're the Son of God. Well, come on out here and feed the hungry. Feed yourself. There's no sense being hungry when you can take stones and make bread. Now, if you go and try to do this, you will eliminate the possibility of your transition. Your 40 days and your 40 nights in the wilderness are now taking place, and they will continue to take place for now, tomorrow, the day after, until you have come into agreement with certain absolute truth. You must consciously live in the kingdom of God. You must consciously live in the kingdom of spirit, where there are no stones that can be turned into bread. You must consciously not live in form. You must consciously see no material object as reality. In your 40 days you have learned to honor the 10 soul commandments. And so now you are living in your soul above the human mind, above the world mind, above the thought universe. You are spirit, honoring spirit. You are not under hypnosis in a material consciousness. You have one God, not two. One identity, not two. One kingdom, not two. You are spirit living in soul consciousness in the kingdom of spirit as the Son of God. I am no longer seeking truth. I am the truth. I am no longer seeking bread. I am the bread. I am living substance, and from my being flows all that is need. I am self-complete in my spirit. This is your 40-day consciousness. This is being developed, and you must reach the point where your identity is where you stand. And goodness in the human sphere no longer provides a false temptation for you. You're not fooled. You're not led into the decoy of material goodness. And so in your soul consciousness, the consciousness that makes transition, you know there is nothing to change. You have an omnipresent God, omnipresent spirit, omnipresent spiritual power, omnipresent perfection of the one omnipresent creator. You stand there. I am. You are honoring the perfect creator. You are out of duality. You are out of physical matter. You're not trying to improve the spiritual kingdom, and you recognize no other. Now, this is the place we find ourselves. Before this level of consciousness, you're always led into the trap. You're always trying to build a better business, a better human life, a better human government, a better human everything. You're fooled into humanhood. But here the Master is teaching a new viewpoint. You don't start with matter, stone, and change it into better matter. You see that? You don't make matter into better matter. Your whole life effort isn't concentrated on converting this material world into a better material world, a more productive material world. That's for the human race. We are studying transition out of the belief in humanhood into the knowledge of spiritual sonship, into the knowledge of Christ. Now I am. And at this crucial moment, after the 40 days in the wilderness of learning truth, absolute, you are standing in Christ now. I am. I see everything different than human eyes, everything different than the human mind. I am no longer under the hypnosis of the world mind, which traps man into a continuing state of reincarnating material flesh. You are above. You have transcended, and you must. For this is the nature of rebirth into reality. You are in the seventh day consciousness of the soul, accepting perfect divine manifestation, honoring your father, the will, and your mother, the manifestation of that will. All is present, all is perfect, all is now. And the world mind besieging you with a lie finds in you no acceptance of the lie. But he answered and said, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." You are above human thought. Human thought is not what you live in. You are in soul thought, above material consciousness, willing, ready, eager to live in the invisible nature of being in spite of every physical appearance. That which appears to you as a need is a lie. I am the Christ. I am self-fulfilled. All that the Father hath is mine. I am the very bread of life, my new substance, spirit, which I have discovered to be the only substance I ever was, is never hungry, never thirsty, never seeking, never needing, because I am self-complete. I don't need stones to make bread. And later this is demonstrated. Without stones, the multitudes have fed bread. You see the difference? Not converting stones into bread, but bread appears out of invisible spiritual substance. And this is the way of living in the Spirit. I live in the Spirit, and out of my substance, in my consciousness of sonship, flows all that is needed in the form and in the quantity needed. I'm not a miracle man of Jezebel. I am not a mental manipulator. You see that? This new way of life that is not fooled by appearances. In this consciousness you are no longer a house divided. If you had accepted the trap, you would be. The moment you tried to improve matter, or convert matter, or manipulate matter, you would separate yourself from spirit. You would accept that spirit is not all, and you would lose it. There goes your transition. Spirit is all. That's the law. God is all. And so what were we looking at? We were looking at a mental mirage. Pictures in the mind. And who was looking? Do you see the subtlety again? The world mind was presenting a picture of lack. And who was seeing the picture of lack? The world mind was identifying its own picture. In you, the world mind identifies the picture it has projected. It's all a world mind hypnosis. The false creation and the false identification of the creation. And you are captive. And this is how the world mind enslaves its own creation called mankind. See over there? Something's missing. See that business? It needs more effort, more energy. Give it all you've got, and you do. You even maybe make it a better business and knock yourself out in the process. That is not the Christ way. The Christ way is, I have only one business, the perfect spiritual business of the Father. It involves nothing material. I live in the knowledge that I am the Spirit of God. I have all that Spirit has. And out of that knowledge flows what the world thinks of as my business. It is not a product of human hands. That is what is being taught here. It will make you, or it will break you. It will tempt you, or you will overcome the temptation. And the purpose of this class is to develop that consciousness which can look at the world temptation of improving humanhood and say, that's not where my energy goes. I stand still in the knowledge of pure spirit. And that is what will show forth to the world as what it calls better humanhood. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. For it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Perhaps you want to prove to yourself that you're the Son of God, and so you'll be tempted to do things of this character. Perhaps you would like the adulation of the crowd. Wouldn't it be marvelous, you might say, to stand on top of the roof and to leap, and then out of nowhere this invisible hand catches me, and I am deposited gently to the ground, and the world says, Look, there is the Son of God. That is not our way. And if you ever doubted it, all you have to do is see what Christ does. Christ refuses to do this. But who is Christ? Christ is your consciousness that you are the Son of God. You are not in physical form. That was the trap. Oh, you could swim out in the ocean and be rescued, or swim out in a 100-foot wave and come up alive and smiling. What would you prove? It would be false proof, because even though the world would see you saved, that would not be divine protection. That is the point. The emphasis is on, I am not living in a human form. There's no one here to jump off that roof. There's no one here to be saved. And there is a consciousness, soul consciousness, in which this is automatic, and you know it. In soul consciousness, these temptations may not even come to you in your conscious awareness. Your soul will swallow them up. World mind will present all kinds of temptations to your mind, and your mind may not even ever know it, because your soul will say to the world mind, sun, stand thou still. Moon, stand thou still. Before your conscious awareness ever hears a temptation, sees or feels a temptation, it will be dissolved by your soul consciousness. Your soul is never tempted, only your mind. And when you learn to live consciously in soul, the temptations of the mind simply are not there. Your soul says to the world mind, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Isn't it beautiful the way Scripture prepares us, opens the book and shows us? A hand literally reaches out and opens the book to the page and says, here, look, this is a preview of what is happening to you. Every month now that we are being baptized by the Spirit is a preparation for being lifted into soul consciousness, which is never tempted by the Lord, which is never tempted by the devil. And if you still have some doubts, the Father brings us the third temptation. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, meaning the greatest temptation of all, and therewith and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and saith unto him, all these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. All the kingdoms of the world. If you look at your life right now, and particularly the life of those around you, what are they trying to do? Trying to improve the kingdoms of the world, and many are trying to possess a kingdom of the world. And many are even accomplishing this and dying ultimately in the attempt. The kingdoms of the world represent this material world, don't they? And you know Christ is not in the material world. God is not in the material world. My kingdom is not of this world. Well, can you walk in this world and also in the spiritual kingdom? That'll be like trying to walk in a physical body and also in a spiritual body at the same time. And don't tell me Jesus did that. Jesus never walked in a physical body. Jesus never walked in this world. In these temptations, the Spirit of God is living in the spiritual kingdom in spite of the temptations, and remains in the spiritual kingdom, does not step out of the spiritual kingdom, is not tempted out, and so with you. In these temptations, you live in your spiritual body, in your spiritual world, and you are never tempted into a physical body, into a physical world. You do not accept the kingdoms of the world. You do not try to change the stones into bread. You do not try to impress other human beings that you have a separate body and they have a separate body. You're living in the one invisible body of the Spirit, in the one invisible kingdom of the Spirit. And you appear to be in this world as Jesus appeared to be in this world, but he wasn't. And you are not. Because if you are in this world in a physical body now, and if you are in this world in a physical body after the seminar, then you have missed the teaching that transition only comes to one who lives in the realm of soul, in the seventh state consciousness, honoring divine manifestation, knowing there is no other, until I am pronounced the Son of God by the Spirit within me. And then I walk through all these temptations to accept the kingdoms of the world and to show miracles and to show my divine protection, and I am unimpressed, untempted. Who convinceth me there is a lack of sustenance when the Spirit of God is the present sustenance of the universe? Who convinceth me that there are separate forms to be impressed? Who convinceth me that there is a world out here to be possessed? I know of no world. My kingdom is not of this world. In you, then, the 10 Commandments are paramount, and they are living consciousness. You have no other God than Spirit, no other presence than Spirit. You have Spirit omnipresent, without opposite. You are not bowing down to graven images, material objects. You are not using the name of the Lord in vain. You are honoring the seventh day. You are honoring the invisible reality. You are not finding a place where God has stopped and a human has begun. You are not finding a point of separation. You are not a house divided. And so you're not killing Christ. You don't need anything from matter. You're not stealing from matter. You're not coveting matter. You're not adulterating by trying to live in spirit and matter. You're bearing true witness everywhere to your neighbor as the invisible Christ of your own being, and to all that is divine without opposite. But more than meeting these 3 temptations as if they came once or twice or 3 times, or in just the form that they're outlined here, you're living as Spirit in your spiritual universe. Each day preparing for this very same test. Let it come. The challenge is there, and it will come every day, and its purpose is to strengthen you. Every temptation forces you to face it with the conscious awareness of identity, the conscious awareness of the presence of Spirit everywhere as your own being. Perfect now as the Father. You honor the one omnipresent, perfect Creator and perfect manifestation. And the Father who seeth in secret appears visibly as man's concept of your improved self or the improved world. But it is always your invisible soul consciousness appearing as that improvement to men. Whether it's your body or your business. And this is more than just the healing consciousness. This is the living consciousness, which includes the healing consciousness. In this consciousness, you will be able to face the illusion of error, the illusion of evil. And you will also be able to face the illusion of good, the illusion of something bad that has been made good. You will be living in the conscious awareness of ever-present, unchanging perfection. And this is how your healing works will improve. This is how you will do the greater works. Let's hold this consciousness a moment now. I, the living Spirit. There is nothing that I seek to improve. There is nothing that can in any way deprive me of what I am. All that exists everywhere is my perfect Spirit. No matter what appears, all that exists anywhere is my perfect Spirit. Now I am. The Spirit of God here, the Spirit of God there, everywhere I am the living Spirit of God. And if this is not yet firmed in my consciousness, I must continue living in the 40 days and 40 nights until I can say it is finished. I am. I have. I and the Father are one. There is no house divided. The Father is everywhere. I am everywhere. Where the Father is, there is no second self. Everywhere is the Father. Everywhere there is no second self. No dying mortal, no sick mortal, no mortal anywhere. No mortal anywhere. Stepping out of humanhood is the way to transition. Not only my humanhood, but your humanhood. Everyone's humanhood. The human race is dissolved in the consciousness of one who lives in I am the omnipresent Spirit of God. When this is crystallized in consciousness, you are in the fullness of the 10 soul commandments. And like Enoch, you walk out of this world, living light. Like Lazarus, you step out of the tomb. The stone of the world mind is rolled away. You have broken the hypnosis of the world, and this we are doing, individually and as a group. I know it's hard to realize that we've come through 9 sessions. And frankly, I haven't the slightest idea what tomorrow's session will be. But I'm quite sure that Spirit has the answers for us. The 3 temptations are the proving ground of whether or not you have accepted the 10 soul commandments. This isn't just for today, tonight, tomorrow. You can use this constantly as your guide, your checkpoints to find out where you have let in the world mind, where you have a gap, where you have succumbed to human thought. And you will find that each time you eliminate another gap, another place where human thought was able to trick you, until you have overcome the belief in the human thought. Each of these steps along the way is the high road, the true road. Together we are walking into transition. Much love to you. See you tomorrow morning.